Let's face it, our spouses or family member work in one of the most mentally challenging occupations. I was just reading a statistic. It was published by First Help, which stated that 13% of law enforcement officers have reported thoughts of suicide. Hello, and welcome to Code 44 podcast. If you are a spouse or a family member of a law enforcement officer, you are in the right spot. Have you ever noticed your spouse becoming more reserved, maybe being distant, withdrawing a little bit, or just emotionally exhausted after a long shift? Have they maybe come home and just seemed a little different, maybe off just a little bit? Or how about this one? Have you ever felt like you were alone as the spouse and you couldn't reach out? Because, well, let's face it, we're spouses of law enforcement, and they would be so angry if we talked about what they were experiencing or what we thought that they were experiencing to others. Or what about this one? This one gets me. Are you concerned, like me, at the rapid increase in the number of law enforcement officers who are taking their own lives? Are you praying that that never happens to you? Well, you're not alone. Let's face it, our spouses or family member work in one of the most mentally challenging occupations. I was just reading a statistic. It was published by First Help, which stated that 13% of law enforcement officers have reported thoughts of suicide. That number represents real people, our partners. Maybe if you're a parent, your children, our friends that are silently carrying the weight of what they've seen. I'm saddened that an occupation that is so important to the safety of each one of us and so important to our communities is a detriment to their own health. My name's Amy Cortez, and I'm a mother of two and a spouse of a law enforcement officer who have served for over 30 years. He struggled with many things that he has seen. And honestly, he's been in the darkest places imaginable mentally. The place that none of us want our spouses to be. And because he was there, I was there. And what I've recognized is that there are a lot of resources for the law enforcement person themselves and for spouses after a tragic event. But I couldn't find a lot of resources for spouses of law enforcement before it's too late and before that line breaks. This podcast was created for spouses and family members of law enforcement because we're the ones that see the signs first. But often we don't recognize them, or honestly, we don't know what to do next. I'll be sharing through this podcast my journey as a spouse, things that I've learned, things that I've recognized, and my true hope and desire is that it helps you, just one of you. My goal is really simple: to break the stigma, to start the conversations, even though they're tough sometimes, and to help you and your family before the line breaks. Whether someone invited you to this podcast or you accidentally found it, I'm so glad you're here. And here's the best part: you can engage however you want. I know sometimes I like to be an introvert. And so you can watch this in the silence of your own home. You can listen to it in your car or during your workout. Or if you're an extrovert and you like to do life with people, grab a group of other spouses of law enforcement officers and watch it together. You choose. So let's get real. Let's talk about the statistics. I shared at the beginning that 13% of individuals who work at law enforcement agencies have suicidal thoughts. Now, maybe they're active or maybe they're not. Maybe it's just a thought and it goes away, but the thoughts are there. So let's put that in real terms. If your spouse works at an agency of 100, 13 of them are walking around with those thoughts. If your spouse works at an agency of 200, that's 26. If I just stop and think about faces and names to that, 13 people in a 100-person agency, real people, your spouse, my spouse, our friends, our loved ones are thinking about it. So when I started thinking more about that stat, I really started visualizing what they see daily. And I'll share a story of what really led me to this thought. One sunny afternoon, my two girls, age 15 and a half and 23, we were driving with my husband somewhere. I don't remember specifically where we were going, but we were driving out in the country. And it was a summer afternoon, so it was still sunny. And we're approaching this landscape that was just absolutely beautiful. It was a white picket fence that was surrounding a very, very large farm. We live in Ohio, and so flat land, large farm community, and it was just beautiful. It was a white picket fence, and off in the distance, there was a barn that was just gorgeous. There were flowers around, and there's a sharp curve right in front of it. And my oldest daughter said, "Wow, this is a really, really beautiful spot. I would love to live out this way." And without missing a beat and unintentionally, my spouse, who, as I said, was in law enforcement for over 30 years, said, "I had a fatal here." And the fatal involved teenagers who didn't take the curve as they should have, and then proceeded to share a little bit of the details of the story of what it is that he saw and experienced. Now, I'm not going to share all those details because I certainly want to protect the privacy of the family of that individual. But I'll say this, it was gruesome, it was ugly, and I could see a look in my husband's eyes. He was back there in that moment. And what hit me was that a landscape that was so beautiful to myself and my daughters was a memory that my spouse held of an extremely tragic event. I think when most people think about law enforcement, they think about driving maybe above the speed limit. Am I going to get caught? Or how about you? Have you ever felt when someone pulls up behind you, even though our spouses are in law enforcement, you quickly look at the speedometer and go, "Oh my gosh, am I going too fast? Or do I use my turn signal? Am I doing all the right things?" And so we think about them always catching us in things, right? And I'm pretty sure if we talk to our spouse and ask them, why did they go into law enforcement? They would probably say something along the lines of, "Oh, I cannot wait for those high-speed chases, the adrenaline, chasing the bad guy and arresting them and taking them off to jail." Or maybe theirs is, "I wanted to do good for my community and be involved in my community." Whatever it is, I can almost wholeheartedly reassure you that they did not go into it to see all the gruesome stuff that they actually see. And we're not talking about just occasionally. We're talking about ongoing, sometimes multiple times in a shift. The things that we can't fathom seeing, sometimes they have to leave one scene and go directly to the next. I was talking to a spouse of a Leo law enforcement officer, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, "My husband came home from a very tragic event, and he said, 'I'm fine. I was made for this job.'" It stopped me in my tracks. In fact, I probably paused and I didn't say anything. And I think she might have said, like, "Are you still there?" But it made me pause because I thought, is there anybody that is really made to see these things? I'm not even going to mention the fact that sometimes our spouses aren't treated so nicely in the public, right? Because they are law enforcement. But if we just think about the experience that they have to see over and over and over again, is anyone made for that? I know for myself, if I saw just one tragic event, I think I would be scarred for life, and I think I would have a hard time dealing with it. So when my husband puts on his uniform and he straps on that gun and he straps on that vest that potentially is going to save his life, and I watch him walk out the door, I always say a prayer. But then I start my day and I get busy. Maybe I'm shuffling kids. Maybe you shuffle kids, or maybe you're going off to your career. And we just get lost in thinking my husband is at work. He's just out writing tickets. And then he comes home. He'll come in and he'll give me a kiss and he'll say, "Hi, honey, how was your day?" And I'll share stories of, I was on this meeting, it went great, or it didn't go so well, and this person frustrated me, and this situation frustrated me. And he'll let me add, our children were not doing what they were supposed to, or they needed to be ran all over the county for events that they were involved in. And usually I'll go on for a few minutes about how my day was and sharing it with them. And I know he truly meant it. And I truly know he wants to know about my day. So then I'll ask, "Honey, how was your day?" And he'll say, "It was fine. It was a typical day." And maybe later that evening, or maybe a day from then or a week from then, I'll find out through just conversation that his day wasn't so great. It wasn't so fine. And I'm reflecting on a particular day where he had a tragic event that involved a very small child. And not only that, but he also had an event that someone took their life. And when that individual took their life, their family was in the house. And when he responded, he was responding life-saving measures to that individual, but he also was there for the family that was grieving and was just begging for help to save their loved one. And probably that same day, he had a death notification that he had to give, where he had to show up at somebody's house and communicate with them that their loved one had passed away. Now, maybe at this point you're going, "Amy, you're getting too close to home," or, "Guys, you're making this seem really awful." It might all sound really gruesome, but I am here to be real. And I'm not sharing the exact details of the specific incidents my husband described for that particular day when he said he was fine. But guys, all of this happens to our spouses. And maybe not all on one day, maybe multiple days, but all of that compounds. So I'm going to pause there just for a second. Is there anything fine or okay? Which is how my spouse had described that day. But is there anything fine or okay with that event? Personally, for me, I know I would not be fine. In 2023, CNA Corporation began collaborating with First Help to analyze the data of law enforcement and correction officers' death by suicide. In March in 2024, they released their findings that between the years of 2016 and 2022, there's been roughly 1,300 deaths. But here's what I noticed in that stats as they showed the graph, is that year over year, there was a rapid increase and continues to be an increase year over year. That average was 184 deaths per year. Now, maybe that sounds like a lot to you. For me, that sounds like a lot. But it's probably not the extent of the problem that we're actually seeing with law enforcement, because not all the data is easy to find. You might ask, why is that? There's a couple reasons. As I was reading their research, they said that reporting is voluntary, first of all. It's inconsistent because sometimes they're lumped into a broader suicide statistic, right? It's not specific to law enforcement. It's just that it was a suicide. So that's going to skew the numbers a little bit. Also, a lot of times for law enforcement suicides, they do report them cautiously. Sometimes they'll do undetermined or sudden death or pending investigation and maybe never going back and changing that. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but my point is that I bet you that the 184 is actually much larger. Research groups like First Help and the FBI's LESDC are in 2025 working towards a more complete, consistent data in the agency. So we know specifically what that stat really looks like. But for me, 184 is enough that I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to break the silence, and I want to talk about it. So I hope you will join me on this journey. My podcast is Code 44. The name means something to me. So my husband, as I said, is in law enforcement. He is part of the BSSA, which is the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, and they have a radio code, 44. Officer needs help. I truly believe that all law enforcement needs help to process their job. I also believe from my experience that we start to see symptoms at home. They are subtle, and sometimes we don't recognize them, but we are a large network of spouses and family members, and I want to talk about them. I'll be sharing my journey with my husband, Mike. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry during this podcast, I'm sure. And we are going to expose the real life stories. And my hope is that through awareness and strength, we all become stronger together. For today, I want you to stop and recognize some of the things that maybe your spouse has said as an indication. I'm going to go back to my fence story. My husband didn't say it to make the atmosphere feel heavy, even though it did for me. He said it so nonchalant and just so matter-of-factly and was just sharing. But for me, I stored that away and I thought, I want to unpack that a little bit with him because I'm sure there's something there that he hasn't fully recovered from. So do me a favor, guys. Click the subscribe on this podcast wherever you got it. I'll be dropping a podcast every week. If you click subscribe, there's no fee. It's all free. So please click it now and join me on this journey. In my next episode, we're going to be talking more in depth about the stigma. Why is there a stigma? And how can we help the stigma? So please join me on this journey. Before I end our time, I just want to say a quick prayer. Whether you're a faithful person or not, it's okay. You can say these words, and I'm praying over your husband or your wife. So Lord, I pray for every spouse and family member that is watching this. And I pray for your protection over their mental health today. Lord, ease their burdens today. I also ask that this group helps each other to help us know that we are not alone. And this is a first step in getting it out in the open so we can recognize, respond, and support. Thank you. I hope you join me on my next episode of Code 44.